To the World of Warcraft raids, gameplay, questing, and more panel. Your panelists are Craig Amai, Tom Chilton, Ian Hazakostas, Dave Kosak, Corey Stockton, and Greg Street.
All right. Hello, guys. Just jumping right into things. So this panel, we're going to kind of pick up a bit where we left off at our intro panel yesterday. Go over some raids info, questing info, gameplay, and other systems that we didn't get to talk about yesterday, and then we'll have some time for question and answer right after that. So let me just jump right into this. I want to talk a little bit more about the raid content that we're going to have in Warlords of Dreanor. So yesterday I mentioned the Blackrock Foundry raid. This is going to be the capstone of the raid content that we launched the expansion with. As I mentioned, we're going to try to repeat the two-tier system that we had in Mists of Pandaria, where we have that sort of smaller intro tier that's available right away to kind of whet your appetite for raiding, as most of the world is still leveling and gearing up and getting ready for that. And then a few weeks after that, we unlock, sort of the real centerpiece of the intro expansion content, and that's going to be the Blackrock Foundry. Now, this is the center of the Iron Horde war machinery in the zone of Gorgrond. It's going to be a 10-boss raid and non-linear layout. We have heard you guys, we miss Ulduar 2, we miss Icecrown Citadel, that type of layout. There's a lot to be said for delivering both an epic raid.
So does one other guy.
Exactly. Just that one guy, though. There's a lot to be said for delivering an epic raid in terms of scope, but also giving you the freedom to kind of work your way through a place more organically, instead of just proceeding from boss 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. It's also nice to be able to choose what you're going to progress on, and so forth. So we're happy to do that. And your goal here is going to be to dismantle the Blackrock Foundry from the inside, tear down the war-making capabilities of the Iron Horde, and face off against Warlord Blackhand, who is the chieftain of the Blackrock Orcs, and heads up the Foundry as a whole. Now, this is a concept illustrating just kind of the general vibe we're going for here. Really just a lot of, this is smoke and soot and flame and dark iron. That's what the Iron Horde's all about. That's what their machinery is all about. Now, this is a sort of overall layout in 2D of what we're looking at for the structure of the raid as a whole. And you see there are 3 wings here. There is sort of the first wing, which is mostly about melting down the ore into slag. The second wing, where that molten ore is forged and refined and shaped into weapons, armor, the engines of war. And then finally an assembly wing, where all of that is put together, soldiers are armored up, the war machines are shipped off to the front lines. Now, we want to put this together really as something that has a very functional feel to it. This isn't, a place that was designed as a raid zone. This is a place that was designed as a foundry. And we want to get back to some of that interconnectedness that you got as you walk through old places like Upper Blackrock Spire or Blackrock Depths, where you can kind of look down and see the other parts of the zone going on around you. So just because you see this 2D layout where everything is spread out in different directions, that's really more just to kind of help us in our conceptualization of the zone. But the thought is 3 separate wings, and then once you've cleared all of these wings, you can access the crucible that you see at the top of this layout, where Blackhand himself awaits. Now, part of what we'd like to do in having non-linear layouts is also really preserve some of the freedom that players currently doing flexible mode may be used to in how they approach the zone. Right? If you're doing Siege of Orgrimmar today, at this point, if you want to just queue up and face off against Garrosh directly, you can do that if you're doing flexible. Now, with our new raid structure, it's going to be something that you just zone in the front door for instead of queuing, but we want to preserve some of that freedom. So we envision some things such as maybe once you've cleared all the wings a certain number of times, maybe you can forge a key that lets you directly access the Crucible later on, if your raid leader has that ability, so that you don't necessarily have to feel like if you have to re-clear 9 bosses just to get to the 10th every time. And in general, you have as much freedom and you'd be able to plan your raid week the way you want. Speaking of the new raid structure, I'd like to revisit this slide from yesterday's panel. I know there were a lot of questions, and I've definitely heard a lot of interesting discussion coming out of this. I just wanted to clarify how this is going to work overall. So in Warlords, we're going to have ultimately 3 different difficulty tiers for organized raid content. Raid Finder, more or less unchanged. The Raid Finder of Warlords is going to be the Raid Finder you know today, with some addition of flexible scaling tech to help a bit with queue times, to help with, minimizing waiting time if people leave midway. But other than that, we see the normal mode in Warlords really being equivalent to what flexible mode is today, in difficulty and in overall, in our overall philosophy towards it. It just doesn't make sense to call a difficulty flexible, once flexible really is the norm and how the majority of our raiding is going to work in Warlords. If you are a normal mode guild today, you will find heroic content likely suitable for you in Warlords, except that will now scale from 10 to 25 flexibly. And if you're a heroic guild today, our 20-player mythic content will be for you. Now, about the raid structure, one of the awesome things about this, and one of the things that makes flexible raiding as a style great, is the freedom that it gives you to raid with friends that maybe can't necessarily make all of your raids, people that may log on late for the raid one night, they can hop in, and you can also participate without necessarily feeling a sense of obligation where you're letting 3 people down if something comes up and you can't make it. But what this also means is that all of our raiding, except for Mythic, will be fully cross-server enabled from day 1. That is normal, that is heroic. So when Highmall or when the Blackrock Foundry opens up, if you have, you want to join some real-life friends on another server for their normal mode raid on the weekend after you do heroic with your guild, you can do that, or vice versa. We really want to give the maximum amount of flexibility to be able to play with your friends and experience the content as you choose. I think cross-server Mythic would be a bit messy with things like Realm Firsts, and for the most part, Mythic guilds are grounded to a single server, so we're keeping it that way. Each difficulty has a separate lockout. So you don't have to worry about, oh, I did heroic with my guild on Wednesday, so I can't join my friend's raid on the weekend. It also means there's no more dynamic difficulty switching, because everything is its own lockout, which has some other interesting implications. Right now, you have the UI interaction very frequently, if you're a normal or heroic raider, where you say, let's switch the difficulty to heroic for this boss, then back to normal. Well, when you're doing mythic raiding, for example, you're just doing it as a standalone raid. It means we can also have mythic trash. I know everyone really has wanted mythic trash if you've been dying for it for years. Okay, maybe not. But you can get mythic trash loot, which is something.
Gastropods.
Just wait for the mythic gastropod. Moves like 10 times faster. Now, the way these lockouts are going to work also is that they're very similar to the current flexible lockouts in that they're loot-based lockouts. That is to say that you can be in the raid with a boss alive that you've already looted that week. However, you just can't loot it again. So again, if you want to help out a friend, if someone asks you to join them later on, you're not going to be able to loot the same boss twice, because that would be all kinds of problematic, but you're completely free to raid and join groups as you see fit. Currently, the way flexible raids work, you go through the interface and you queue up for it, you're teleported into the zone. That's a concession, ultimately, that we made to just get the raid finder functionality, to get flexible raid functionality into the game and in your hands for Siege of Orgrimmar, which we think is very well worth it and awesome. But in the long run, this is normal raiding going forward. This isn't some special mode. This is just how raiding works. You walk in the front door, you form a group, you zone into the instance, and you are raiding, except it scales flexibly. The only raid activity that's going to work through queuing through the UI and teleporting is going to be Raid Finder. So, how does loot work, many people have asked. Does this mean that personal loot is now the norm for heroic raiding? No. Again, personal loot as it currently stands is really well suited to groups of strangers in Raid Finder, or pickup groups where maybe it lets you not have to deal with, do you trust someone to be the master looter? Do I trust this guy's not going to ninja loot and run off with things? But when you're playing with your guildmates, when you're playing with your friends, you want the ability to trade items to those who need them more than you. If someone comes back to the game after a while, maybe you want to kind of train them through and dump a bunch of loot in their laps so that they can really get caught up quickly. Maybe you want to pass something to someone for their 4-piece set bonus. All those things need to be possible, we feel, and that's how loot is going to work in normal and heroic mode. So that raises the question, of course, well, how is the drop going to work? If I have 13 people, do I get 2.6 loots? What is 0.6 of a loot? The answer is actually 0.6 of a loot is 60% chance to get a third loot. So the thought is that this will scale smoothly, where the ratio of loot drops per eligible player remains constant throughout. We really want to avoid and continue to work on avoiding any perception of breakpoints or magic numbers when it comes to making these flexible groups. That's something we've certainly learned and heard from the community as this has played out. We never want you to feel like when your friend asks to join, you say, oh no, that's going to put us over some invisible threshold. We also don't want you to feel like you need to go out and find some random warm body to get over some threshold. In addition to loot, one of the things that we're working on doing is streamlining the way some of our ability targeting and logic work, again, to avoid breakpoints. In many cases today, you have cutoffs where when you bring a 15th player, suddenly 3 people get targeted by some boss's ability instead of 2. Again, we feel like with most abilities, we can probably randomize in a way that avoids the existence of breakpoints. So for example, to use a Siege of Orgrimmar example, Sun Tenderheart in the Fallen Protectors encounter casts Shadowward Bane. Shadowward Bane hits two people if you have 10 players, 5 people if you have 25. Today, the second you go from 14 to 15, it starts hitting a third person, which makes many people, I think, somewhat justifiably feel, well, we should try to avoid having 15. 14 is kind of a magic number. Well, if instead it just hit when you had 14, it had an 80% chance of hitting 3, 20% chance of hitting 2, over the course of the fight as a whole, you're still going to see the same number of debuffs on average, but you're never going to feel like you're hurting yourself by bringing an extra person. Now, there are some mechanics that won't necessarily work for, like prisons on Shav Pride, where it's actually really important to know exactly how many are going to go out. You don't want to be caught by surprise or have to be random every time. But for the most part, we're going to do everything we can do to avoid the existence of breakpoints when it comes to mechanics, when it comes to loot, and to really make it feel like, okay, you have 17 people online, go raid with 17. You have 12 online, go raid with 12. Just play with your friends, have fun, enjoy the content. Now I'm going to hand it off to Craig, who's going to talk a bit about some of the quest revamps we have coming up.
Thank you, Ian. Hello, BlizzCon. All right, let's talk about quest. So one of the first things you're going to notice when you step into Draenor is that we're calling out key storylines through icons on our quest tracker and our quest log. Essentially, we want to draw attention to the big quest chains with big characters that lead towards big rewards, so you can make intelligent decisions about what content you want to participate in, what you want to focus on, especially as you reach that kind of end of the zone point where you're considering moving on. While those key storylines are guiding you through zones, you're going to be noticing that a lot of the other quests outside of those chains are more distinctly separated. So you really have the choice of whether you want to participate in additional quests along the way or whether you want to follow just that primary story track. This will have the side effect also of making the world feel a little bit more full and organic. If you go wandering out and find a quest hub, there won't be a magic quest that unlocks it and makes all the quests there start appearing. And it'll give you a lot more control over your experience. The efficient route will still be follow those key storylines, pick up the other quests along the way. But if you've been doing dungeons a fair bit, or again, if you're reaching the end of a zone, you may choose to focus on those key storylines and not be picking up as much of those strictly optional quests. As you go through these zones questing, you'll notice we'll be using a lot more of these side systems, dynamic events and treasures that we first introduced on Timeless Isle. So dynamic events are essentially gameplay challenges with cool rewards behind them and minimap callouts. So on Timeless Isle, for the most part, they were soloable rare spawns, but as you step into Draenor, you're going to be seeing some more complex versions, some multi-stage events with big culminations, or some wandering raid bosses that encourage lots of players to pile up and overcome a big social challenge. These will be mixed in a lot more during the level up experience. You'll also be seeing them a lot at level 100. So it should make the entire experience feel a little bit more, again, organic. Make it feel like there are opportunities coming up outside just the questing experience. Treasures are essentially our way of encouraging you to explore the world even more than the art already does. We make beautiful worlds, and we want to reward you for peeking in every nook and cranny. So the idea with treasures is when you find that hidden path that leads up the mountain and the quest never took you up, it's very likely there will be something at the top of it that makes it worthwhile to go up there. We also want to, with our treasures, kind of support just little mini stories within the world. So a couple examples you'll see in Frostfire. When you go into one of our ogre towers, you might run into a little bird's nest up on a rafter that just has a sparkling gem in it that you can loot for a cool reward. Or you might run into an Iron Horde caravan that's become entrenched in snow with some Iron Horde troops trying to dig out the wheels. And if you kill them, there's a chest on the back of their caravan that has a cool reward in it. You expect these to be very frequent because as we have that goal of encouraging exploration, we want to make sure that we're doing it effectively all over the world. Another thing you'll be seeing is what you might be used to from the reward scheme for quests is that you'll run into a lot of green items along the way and then cool blue items at the end of essentially key storyline chains. What you'll be running into now is that there's going to be a lot more opportunity for rewards to spike during your questing experience. So a reward that might be green for one player might actually end up being blue or epic for another player. It'll become less predictable, a little more exciting as you're questing through. We also have a fair number of UI updates that are coming in with Draenor. I want to give you a sneak peek at a few of them. So here you'll notice the special icons next to some of the quests in the quest log. Those are the key storyline icons I was talking about. Above them, you also notice that we're calling out the number of key storylines that exist in a zone in the form of chapters here, 2 out of 6. This will help you actually have a rough gauge of your progress through a zone, so you can make choices about whether you want to finish that zone off versus moving on to another one, depending on how far you are through. The other thing you'll notice here is the quest banks on the map. Those are actually calling out the locations of key storylines that you haven't yet picked up, or that maybe you abandoned along the way. So these will actually dynamically update if you went halfway through a storyline and stopped. They'll show you where you can pick back up on that storyline if you want to. This should make it a lot easier to figure out exactly what you need to do to knock out those zone achievements, finish off a zone without, asking for help from CS or anything. Max level content. I want to talk about this a little bit while we're here too. So we had the philosophy going from Cataclysm into Mists of Pandaria that we wanted to provide you a lot more things to do when you reached max level. Well, that philosophy still stands moving into Draenor. We want to give you lots of options, a lot of opportunity for things outside of just dungeons and raiding, things that you can do in the outdoor world. So in Draenor, you'll be seeing more max level content than ever before, but I can promise you right now that little, if any, of it is going to be daily quests. So there's a couple key content structure philosophies we locked in on Mists of Pandaria that we really liked. One of them was the progressive long-term storylines behind the Dominance Offensive and Operation Shield Wall dailies. The chapter-based kind of like leave you off on a cliffhanger, pick it up again in a few days or a week type content to take you through a big story over a longer duration. The other content structure we really liked the success of was the more open-ended structure inherent with Timeless Isle, with the exploration, the deep reward systems, options for how you want to participate in your content. We essentially want to marry those two structures and create big zones with lots of opportunity, free-form content that have these long-term progressive storylines that thread through them over the weeks, so you keep having reason to go back and dive into them even deeper. The one other type of max level content you might be seeing a bit more of in Draenor is essentially environmental gameplay in the form of, I guess you would have seen it in our Troves of the Thunder King loot room scenario. What we want to push forward is opportunities to use all those class abilities in the outdoor world that sometimes only apply to PvP or top-end raiding. Opportunities to play out your race and your class to its unique advantages to try and squeeze out extra rewards. So you'll be seeing a little bit more of that at max level too. So that's a good overview of our max level content. Next up, we're going to talk about garrisons. I'm going to go ahead and hand this over to Corey.
I'll just going to jump in and reiterate some of the points. Our overall goal with our questing system is really we wanted to create a more dynamic world, a more organic experience this time, and really kind of break you out of your patterns that you have while you're questing so that you see more happening around you. And particularly at max level, we experimented a lot in Pandaria, and some of those experiments we think worked out really great. Some of them were the Golden Lotus, but we tried a lot of things, and I think you'll see some of those more successful experiments roll up into the next expansion, because we really want to have a lot to do out in the world while you're exploring this great world of Dreanor.
Right on. So now we're going to get into some garrisons. Anyone that was here yesterday for our talk, we kind of did an overview of the system, and today we're going to do a little bit of a deeper dive into how some of this stuff works. So when you build your garrison, you get a certain number of buildings that are already there to begin with. These are things that we didn't think they didn't really fit the paradigm of taking this structure and getting to place it anywhere in the garrison, like a mine, for example. A mine kind of has to be placed in a specific spot. The town hall is your main building. That's the building you're going to go to interact with the guys that are running your garrison and send your guys on missions. So that's got a predefined spot, and it upgrades with your garrison as it goes. After you have starting buildings, you'll get the chance to build your first small building. Here's a list of all the small buildings that you can build. All of our profession buildings are considered in the small category. And this really fits the kit of what we were talking about yesterday, where you'll be able to actually dabble into professions that your main character doesn't have. So for example, let's say you find a follower, and that follower is an engineer. You can now choose to build the engineering works building, assign that follower to that building, and then you can now run missions to get recipes for engineering and build engineering items, but you're actually not even an engineer. You're a blacksmith miner, for example. It's a really cool way to integrate it into the gameplay. So moving on, now we have medium buildings. This is kind of the next step up from smalls. It's a wide variety of buildings here. The inn, we talked a little bit about the inn yesterday. That's a place that you could find new followers. This will also be the place that you can get the pet stable, which is a building that's very unique to pet battles. You'll be able to come here. There'll be a trainer here you can fight. There's a lot of cool stuff that you can do here that'll be just based around having that one unique building. Next up would be large buildings. These are the things that you would expect to see like in a Warcraft 3 base. Things like your barracks, right? Your armory, your mage tower. These are really these defining large buildings that are going to set the scale for your garrison. Each of these buildings has a bonus. These buildings have some of the best bonuses because they're the largest ones that you can get. So things like the barracks will increase the amount of followers you can actually have at any one time. So you're going to want to have more because they're out getting that loot for you. So the more followers you can have out on missions, the better chance you have to get new loot. Now, how do the buildings work? As we talked about yesterday, they upgrade over time. So you start out with a building. Now, each building has its own unique upgrade. So that that barracks that you built, it'll start out looking kind of doinky, kind of small, but over time, you can get cooler and cooler versions that'll make it look more badass, more awesome, and it'll increase the bonus. So here's a look at a screenshot from our mock-up UI of how this would work. You can see the tooltip there on the infirmary that right now it's level 1, but at level 2 it increases the bonus. Obviously you'll have to pay a cost to get that, but you'll do all of that through this UI. You'll be able to come to the building, choose to upgrade it, wait a little bit of time, and then you'll get that new bonus. Now, how do we get the upgrades? Some upgrades you're just going to be able to purchase just for gold or currency. But we really want to get this feature to be something that feels like a part of the world. So we're going to drop a new item called blueprints. And you'll be able to find blueprints all over the world, lots of different ways. They could be a faction reward, quest reward, a random drop in a zone. When you find it, you just right-click it, just like a recipe for a profession, and then you can go back to your garrison, and now you'll know how to build that upgrade for that building. Where are these plans? Anyone that's played the pet battle system will be familiar with this concept here. So on this infirmary, to get the level 3 blueprint, we tell you where it is in the world. We show you it's a drop, it's in Frostfire Ridge. We could do the same thing with faction or wherever it would go. So you don't need to hop out of the game and go somewhere to try to find that info. It's right here available to you. Now, yesterday we talked a little bit about this too, about specializations. This allows you to customize a building once it gets to rank 3. So buildings have a total of 3 upgrades, and when they hit that 3rd upgrade, you unlock the ability to specialize it. So here's a look at what that would look like in game. You can see this armory has 3 specializations. Currently, we're thinking we'll let you change the specialization probably once each day. We might put a cost on it to change the specialization. We don't want you swapping it all the time, but we definitely want to give you the option to change it without too much trouble. It's a really cool reward for getting rank 3 of a building. Not only do you get the new art, the better bonus, but you get this piece of customization that you can do to it. Some buildings will let you assign followers to them. The example I gave you guys about the engineer a little earlier, all the profession buildings can have a follower assigned, but you can also assign followers to other places, like the mine, for example. You could find a miner, assign him there, and then he could actually work offline while you're gone and collect ore for you. And then what you could do is you could come back into the garrison, go to that building, and collect that ore from him when you log back in. Here's a look at what that would look like. Here's a mine. You can see we've got an orc there working away, generating a specific amount of ore per hour. But it's not like this is free, right? Because that follower, he's working at this mine, but he could also be out running a mission for you, trying to get loot. And that's where a lot of the gameplay really comes into running your garrison. You're going to have to make decisions about, I have these followers, do I want to have them do things for me in the garrison, trying to learn profession recipes, gathering resources, or do I want to send them out on a mission and have them try to bring back, gear for me? You have to really make those choices. So the garrison itself upgrades as a whole. You have buildings that upgrade, but you're going to need a place to put all those buildings. So your garrison starts small, but as it grows, we'll give you more plots to put things in. So here's a look at how that UI would work. This garrison is currently at tier 2. It can go up to tier 3, and you'll get 3 more building slots, allowing you to get more bonuses, find more followers that you can assign to those buildings. It's really a system. It works like your character, right? Every time you level, you get an opportunity to do more things and do more stuff, and that's really the concept here. We want the garrison to grow with you. Now, how do you get it to actually change from one tier to the next? You have to fill all the plots. So let's say at rank 2, your garrison has 6 plots. Once you get a building in all 6 of those plots, you'll unlock the ability to upgrade the garrison as a whole and move it to the next tier. Those plots come in 3 sizes, and you just have to match up the building size with the plot size, and then you can place that building anywhere you want in that garrison, as long as the plots match up. So here's a look at the garrison map in-game. This is rank 1. So we've got 5 plots here for players to use. This is what you start with. Then you go into rank 2, and you can see we've added a few more plots here. A mage tower has been placed, an infirmary. And finally, here's rank 3. And everything's unlocked in this garrison. There's still a few empty spots for players to fill here, but you can really get the vibe of how big it grows with you. So you've got followers, you've got buildings. What do you do with them? You need to send them on missions. So let's talk a little bit about how that would work. Missions can be a number of different activities. Here's an example of a few, how it would work in game. You can send them on a quest. You can do a scenario. You can obviously run a dungeon, and even you can run raids. Raids we're thinking are going to take multiple days to run, but it's really that cool, epic feeling that these followers you find can do awesome, cool things. They're not just hanging out. You can send them out to actually fight for you. The difference between all these activities is they take a different number of followers. So a quest you can run with a single follower, whereas a dungeon you would have to combine 5 followers together and send them off. So how do you assign them? Here's a look at that UI. So your followers are listed out here on the left. On the right, you've got a list of missions. In this case, they're dungeon missions. And you just drag followers into those slots. You can see those lists of icons down there on the right side. Those are basically traits for the mission. And what you want to do is try to match those traits up with the abilities on your follower to get a bonus. So let's say there's a mission where you've got to kill orcs. There's an ability on followers called Orc Bane. You want to try to match those 2 together, and then you'll get a bonus on that mission, and you'll do better at it. So next up, you select the mission here. We show you the difficulty of the mission. So as you're dragging the followers into the UI, it's going to dynamically change and try to give you a little bit of help and know this is something you can do probably pretty easily. This mission, you might have a chance to fail at it, so you really want to decide, do I want to send those guys on it or not? And of course, when you're done, you send them off and wait for them to bring back your sweet loot. So that's a little bit of some more details on how garrisons will work. I'm going to hand it off to Greg, and he's going to talk to you about some of the system stuff coming up.
I was going to elaborate a little bit, because one of the things that I think is important to call out is that even though you're using that UI to assign your follower that has mining into the mine is an actual physical place in your garrison. So when you go there and you go inside the mine, you'll actually see your follower hard at work. Maybe you can whip him a little bit or whatever it is you want to do. If he's a lazy peon, but maybe he's asleep or something like that. So you can go in there, and you'll even be able to get some mining nodes yourself, and even that mine upgrades over time. So the mine is able to get bigger, so you're able to get access to more nodes, stuff like that.
All right. So I want to talk a little bit about social philosophy. I hinted at this yesterday, but ultimately, we want World of Warcraft to be a game that you play with your friends. We think you guys will have more fun. We think you'll build connections. You ultimately probably stick with the game longer. So what we're really going to try to do in Warlords is to encourage you to play with the friends you already have. We're trying to remove the barriers that stop that from happening. And we'd also like to encourage you to make new friends. There was once upon a time, before we offered so much random matchmaking, where you would, hey, this guy's a really good tank. Maybe next time I run a dungeon, I want to find this guy. Nowadays, we can provide a tank, sometimes takes a little longer than others, but we'll probably get you a tank at the end of the day, and there's less motivation to play with your friends. I like this anecdote with the guys in my office. One day I turned around, and one of the dudes was running a dungeon. I'm like, man, if he had asked me, I would have run it with him, but it was so easy just to jump into the dungeon himself that, maybe I wanted to get a cup of coffee or something first, and it was easier just to random matchmake than to play with a guy sitting right next to him. So the random matchmaking isn't going anywhere. We're still going to have Dungeon Finder, we're still going to have Raid Finder, but we kind of want that to feel like a last resort. That's what you do when your friends aren't online, or you're between friends, you start a new job, you got to find a different group. We're going to try to make Raid Finder feel a little more like tourist mode. You're there to see the content and experience the bosses and get to tell part of the story, but we're going to try to encourage people to also experiment with what normal and heroic feel like. So how are we going to support all of this enhanced socialness? We've talked a lot about flexible raiding. Something else we're going to do is finally add a pretty good group finder. We have a raid browser in the game today, and it's pretty terrible. And you guys probably forgot it was there. You can still access it. It's kind of a trick to find it. But we think this feature can be a lot bigger, a lot cooler, compete with the random matchmaking stuff that's already out there. There are some mods and add-ons that people have developed to do this already, and there's a ton of demand from you guys, so we're going to do it. It's going to be very browser-based. You can make a group to do anything. If you want to go back and work on your Shadowmourne, you want to go make a group to kill world bosses, you want to make a rated battleground team, you can do all of that here. It's all cross-realm. You can browse through, find a group of people that look like you want to hang out with, and get a group together. Stacking the deck is a new type of buff that you'll see in Dungeon Finder. Currently, we have the Luck of the Draw, where we give you rewards to encourage you to play with people in the random queue. Believe it or not, at the time, we were worried that people wouldn't use Dungeon Finder, so you had to give you a little bit of extra incentive there, and that worked out really, really well. So the way stacking the deck will work is it will give you a different type of bonus, in this case, bonus Valor. Imagine you get 10% bonus Valor for every friend that you queue with. And then that last bullet is indicating that if you do use Dungeon Finder for a random group, and you get to the end, you're like, hey, this worked out pretty well, do you guys want to re-queue? That will then count as a pre-made group, and you will also get the stacking the deck bonus. All right, let's talk about leveling. 10 levels are back. And we really want leveling to feel exciting. We made the change to the talent tree in Myst for a lot of good reasons. We're really happy with that change overall, but it's a totally fair criticism that getting a new level doesn't feel as exciting as it did in the old day. Even getting plus 1% crit, as lame as that was better than getting nothing. But we want to stop handing out so many new abilities. We don't think it's going to be a great experience if you get 10 new buttons to stick on your bars as you level up from 90 to 100. This has been kind of a long time coming. It's amazing to kind of see the turnaround in the community that now everyone's like, you know what, I'm good. I don't need any more abilities. Stop giving me new abilities. So what we're going to try is from level 91 to 100, as you level up, you'll get some type of upgrade to one of your core spells. Some of these will introduce class changes that we already were planning on making to kind of make it feel like a bonus as you level up. But to be totally fair, some of them are just going to be passive bonuses. Think of them kind of like the old school spell ranks, except you won't have to visit your trainer or anything like that. You always gain a little bit of power just from gaining a level, but we're going to put a really big boost behind some of your spells so you can really feel it. Like, if you suddenly had 20% bonus damage to execute, that's something you're going to feel the next time you go kill someone. But don't expect a ton of class changes overall. Like I said, a lot of these are going to be passive bonuses, not change for change's sake, just to give you a level 93 reward. These are some sample leveling rewards. Hopefully they'll stick, but it's the kind of ideas that you can see that we're playing with. Okay, let's talk a little about items. So our philosophy with itemization, this is like the best reward we can give out in the game, and it's really disappointing when the best reward we can give out in the game feels a little lame. We really want getting a new item to feel exciting. We think part of the problem here is all the modification you have to do when you get an item. It's really disappointing. You get a new helmet, you're like, oh man, I'm not gonna get a meta gem. Maybe I'll just keep it in my bag for a while, and maybe I'll get something better. That's awful. It's time to stop the madness. Hidden expertise. One of our core design values is to make something feel like a bonus. And we think we're at the point where hidden expertise don't feel like a bonus. You have to get to these magic numbers before you feel like you're really fully functional as your spec. Similar, dodge and parry are cool mechanics. Like, it totally makes sense that you're super nimble dude and you dodge out of the way of the dragon claw. But it just hasn't worked out really well as dodge and parry rating that you stack on gear. And we know, particularly lately, tanks are kind of bummed when they get avoidance on their gear. And remember, I'm going to talk a little bit about items here, but yesterday we talked about how we're going to clean up your bag space. I don't want anyone to freak out at all the different types of items we're going to drop, so hopefully you'll have a little more room to deal with it. So I think I have to credit Travis Day with the initial gone slide, but here we go. Now, again, your warrior will still be able to dodge. Maybe we can have more interesting mechanics, like following a successful whatever, you have a higher chance to parry the next attack, but you won't see it on gear. We will have tanking stats, and I can talk about that in a sec here. Ooh, reforging. This is what we call an idea that sounded good on paper. But what it turned into is this terrible cascade where you get a new piece of gear, and now you have to reforge all of your old gear to hit some cap. And yeah, it'll be a little better without hidden expertise, but things like haste caps and crit caps are still out there. And overall, we think it just drags down the excitement of getting a new item when you know you're nowhere near being able to put it on yet. And there's more.
I like how we could get that kind of cheer when we introduced reforging and the same cheer when we get rid of it. It's awesome.
Then 7-0 will bring it back.
It's reverse
8-0 will
psychology.
get rid of it. Enchants are one of those other things. We really want enchants to feel like a bonus. Back in the day, you would get your avalanche, your crusader, whatever on your weapon. That was a really big deal. Since then, we've kind of gone overboard, as we tend to do. And you're putting enchants on your bracers and stuff like that. What we really want to do is have a system where fewer items overall can be enchanted, but there's more choices for those individual items. So maybe we'll make multiple weapon enchants, and you pick the one that's good for your spec or your playstyle. I feel like I'm beating down on some of the professions a little bit here. Don't worry, we'll try to figure out to make sure to minimize the economic impacts to enchanters out there. But we don't think it's fair to everyone to have to deal with so many enchants just so you can have a little bit of gold in the bank. We're going to do something similar with gems. Very few items are going to have gem sockets, But when they do, they're going to be a really big deal. There'll be something exciting. You might only have a gem on a couple of your tier pieces, for example, but it'll be a pretty big stat bonus. I don't think we'll do any like multiple socketed items, so there's no reason to have set bonuses again. And likewise, we think meta gems aren't really a decision. You just get the one that's right for you as a healer or a DPS, and that decision's over. But if you think of the way like Warforging works today, where there's a random chance that your item could be a little better, there's a random chance that it might have a gem on it. So you might get a weapon, and then a few days later, you get a weapon with a gem socket on it, and now you have the decision of, you know, is this an upgrade you want to use? Do you want to pass to one of your buddies in the group, and so on? Whoa. Nobody's happy but the paladin when the end plate drops. So going forward, we're just going to have plate. If plate drops and you're a plate using class, it's potentially something you can wear. Same thing is true of mail, leather, and cloth. So the way this will work is this is awesome. I get all the good slides. If you're a ret paladin, like most of you are, the plate will have strength on it. If you change to your holy spec, the strength on the plate will change to int, and you can just wear that.
Most popular change ever made.
So even in like PvP, for example, they'll just be the priest set from now on. You don't have to, you know, decide you want the healer one or the DPS one. So I'm talking strictly about armor here. So, you know, helmet, shoulders, legs, all of those very visible pieces. We still want jewelry, cloaks, trinkets, and weapons to be more role-focused. If you talk to healers, many of them will tell you that spirit is actually a pretty interesting stat, and you can decide how much spirit you want on your gear in a way that, say, the mage can't decide how much hit they want on their gear. So jewelry, cloak, trinkets, weapons can still be more role-focused. You might have items with spirit, in which case the healer would be interested. You might have an item without spirit, in which case other people might be interested, or the healer might be as well. Some of these will be less I guess, spec agnostic, so probably more spec agnostic, so they may just have attack power, spell power, rather than being like the agility spirit item. And then to replace the loss of dodge and parry, we think we're back at a place where we can just put armor as a good tanking stat. Active mitigation has worked out really well, and we think there's room just to have armor. It won't be the, you know, the stat on every piece because it's not going to be on all of your actual armor, but it can be on things like the rings and cloaks. Tertiary stats. So it might seem like we're really streamlining gear here, but what we're really trying to do is give it a long tail. It's not fun when you go for a long time and don't get your weapon and feel like you're just really far behind everyone else. But at the same time, we don't want you to gear up, you know, in 2 weeks and be done, and then say like, dude, when's the next raid coming out? So we're kind of expanding the idea of Warforging. I mentioned we're doing it with gems. We're also adding these bonus tertiary stats. So you may get a glove one day that has an extra stat on it that does something cool. These don't count against the budget. It's just a bonus when it happens. And here's some examples of tertiary stats we're playing with. I'm not going to read all these. You guys can see the slides. Now again, it's really unlikely, unless you're very dedicated or very lucky, that you're going to have your sturdiness set, because there's just not going to be that many pieces out there. You're not going to be able to stack sturdiness, and guess what? You can't reforge it. We added a little bit about will stack down there because we realize our movement bonuses are kind of difficult to understand about what works with what. So we rebuilt the system to where pretty much any movement speed you get will work with any other movement speed up to some, sane level. Druids. Cleave's been an interesting stat. We played with it a little bit on the trinkets in the latest raid tier, and we don't think it's necessarily fun to be like, I'm going to put on my cleave set, I'm going to take off my cleave set. But if you get it as a bonus on some of your items, hey, that could be pretty cool. You'll do a little bit of extra AE cleaving sometimes. Item squish. We tried it before, we're trying it again. Why? I'm a pretty simple guy at the end of the day, and I have trouble understanding when I see that many zeros on the screen. Make whatever jokes you want. Most of our item inflation comes from previous raid tiers. But it's much less important that Blackwing Lair gear is a massive upgrade over Molten Core gear. Yeah, people are still running that old content, and we're cool with that, but it's not that big a deal that the Blackwing Lair gear is much higher item level anymore. So we're just going to flatten out all of the big jumps that come at the previous raid tiers at these levels. This is current insanity. And these are some slightly more sane numbers. Okay, a bunch of caveats here. I hear people cheering, but I know there's people out there grumbling too, dumbing the game down. Your relative power will not change. If you look at percentages, if you are a healer and you know how much your flash heal heals on your tank, the bar will still jump by the same amount. The relative power of 5.4 gear will not change. So if you're currently a heroic raider, your gear will be just as powerful as it is today relative to all the other gear, and that'll still translate into going into 6.0. If it takes you 5 seconds to kill a Timeless Isle Gulp Frog, it will still take you 5 seconds to kill a Timeless Isle Gulp Frog. And I should probably say this one 4 or 5 times, but if you like to solo old content, you can still solo old content. We'll make sure that happens. We knew a lot of people were trying to get their Ashes of Alar, trying to get their hammer from Ragnaros, but it turns out a lot of people do this all the time, and it brings a lot of, extra value to the game for players who want to keep supporting it. And if you've played on the floor, the item squish is already in, and if you didn't even notice it was in, then awesome. That wraps up our presentation. Looks like we have about 10 minutes left, so we would love to entertain some questions. Be nice to stick to the Warlords of Dreanor topics for now, though we are doing a second Q&A later.